So I finally got to check out the long-awaited final movie of Naruto, Boruto Naruto, the movie. Now, immediately, let's jump into this. The action in this movie is crazy. The film jumps off with a crazy start, and I think that that's one of the strongest starts any Naruto movie has had, because it just starts off with beautifully animated and beautiful art of a fight sequence. Like, if you wanted some action for this film and that's what you're really craving, then one of the things that it definitely brings to the table is it brings the action, and it brings it in nonetheless some of the best art and animation, probably the best art and animation and the most consistently good art and animation that the Naruto series has ever had, whether the anime or the movies. I will tell you right now, the animation is insane, especially for the fight sequences. You will not be let down by the fights in this movie because they're just out of this world, incredibly nicely done, especially for Naruto. Like, you will be like, oh, so this is why the anime has been lackluster with the art and animation, because they put like gajillions of dollars into this film. Another thing I will say is, I think if you want to understand more of the context of this movie, because I will say one of the very small problems that I had with this film was it was very fast paced, and I think it definitely could have been a little bit longer, so that way you could have get a little bit more context of situations and a little bit of more exposition to this world. But if you haven't read the Naruto Gaiden manga, you should definitely read that first and then go and watch this movie, because it's only about 10 chapters and it introduces you a little bit more to the world. Because with this film, a lot of things is kind of like they try to rush through and explain things really quick so that you can understand, okay, we have different technology in this world now, you know, it's advanced quite a bit, and it tries to explain things very quickly. So in that regard, yeah, it's very fast paced, maybe to a certain degree sometimes too fast paced, but ultimately if you read the Gaiden manga, then you'll be a little bit more familiar with the characters in the world, and you won't have to feel like, oh man, I'm really trying to understand everything really quick as far as like the surroundings and everything that's changed in the Narutoverse since the end of the manga or the anime. Now, as most of you may know, this movie is mainly centered around Naruto's son Boruto and his troubles with his father, and a lot of people were coming into this thinking that they were going to hate Boruto because he's pretty much a Naruto clone. And for a good chunk of this movie, one of the things that I felt it did very well, with trying to be very spoiler free here as possible, ultimately his character was a bit different from what Naruto was. Granted, I think he evolved, and ultimately throughout the movie he definitely developed, but a lot of the movie he was just kind of different. Like, I came into this expecting him to be this complete genius, and granted he is pretty freaking smart and everything, but in comparison to like Naruto, one of the things that I'll tell you right now, like a difference between him and his father, was his father didn't really care about like fashion or being flashy and stuff like that. Boruto does. He wants the hottest clothes, he wants to look the coolest or whatever. Naruto was just like, I'm gonna be the best. Another thing with Boruto's character is that he's kind of one of those lax people that just wants the easy way out, and this film definitely does a good job of developing him and stuff like that, but Naruto's character was never like that. So if you're coming into this expecting, oh, I'm just gonna see OG Naruto, don't need to see it, you're wrong, because Boruto's character is definitely different. To be honest with you, I think some people might not like his character for a good chunk of this movie because of that. Some people might be turned off at the fact that he wants the easy way out and stuff like that. Now, as far as his problems go, because a lot of people obviously know, if you read Gaiden or whatever, that he's mainly pissed off that his father neglects him and the family. And to be honest with you, the way the movie portrays it, it's understandable that a young kid would feel this way. And some of the things he says and everything is like, fuck, man. Like, I understand where he's coming from at the end of the day. And I think a big part of this film with the new generation of characters I've noticed is that they're kind of very talk-backative, so to speak. Like, a lot of these characters, they're like modern kids nowadays, how kids like talk back and they think they know everything and stuff like that. Definitely the new generation is nothing like the old generation or any generation before that. People were a lot more humble, but I noticed in the Narutoverse, as the generations kept going, the characters got a little bit more cockier, and like, you know, even Naruto's generation to a certain degree, like people like Sasuke, they thought they were the shit or whatever, but this generation, they're just like, a lot of them are loudmouths and they think they know everything. So I noticed that about this generation, that they're more spoiled generation, and it kind of makes sense in regards to the Naruto world has been for the most part cured of any big crises or problems or anything, so the kids are going to be a little bit more spoiled. They don't got to worry about things, so definitely it's reflected upon a lot of the characters in this actual film. And if you're a Sasuke fan, as I said in my first reaction video, you will really mess with this film heavy, because he just gets so much screen time, and the relationship between Sasuke and Boruto in this film is captured very right as far as like what a sensei should be. Granted, I think there still should have been more time for some exposition and kind of giving a little wiggle room, so that way Sasuke doesn't immediately like, oh, okay, you know, I'll take you under my wing. There should have been a little bit more time to showcase the character, like getting around to it, whatever. But that's again a problem with the whole pacing issue. But as far as like his relationship with Boruto and kind of like where they go from the beginning of the film when he first, tries to get trained by him or whatever. It's a really interesting and nice relationship. And just seeing Sasuke with Sarada and everything, like, you really need to read the Gaiden manga so you can see that it wasn't always like that. Sasuke wasn't always like, oh, my daughter, and being around and everything like that. So you definitely need more context. And again, that's one of the flaws of this movie, which it doesn't really have many, but it's that it's fast-paced and it sometimes lacks context. Now, as far as the villain goes, in comparison to the last Naruto movie, I will say one thing. These villains, they're not as far as like interesting goes. I mean, they have a connection to Kaguya, but so did Tonetti Otsutsuki. However, I will say as far as like destructive force, like, they're credible, they can do some really big and heavy shit. I would say that these villains succeed in every which way more so than Tonetti, because like I never really believed that Tonetti was gonna do some epic shit. I always just was like, but these villains, they're hype as fuck and they kick some ass in this film. So I will give respect in that regard. I mean, they're not complex villains. Their motives for the most part are kind of like simplistic to a certain degree, but ultimately they kick so much ass and they serve purpose of being the antagonist and villain of this film in a very epic way. And it's interesting to see Naruto's character and how much he's evolved. I will say there's certain times where I'm like, man, I understand you're the busiest motherfucker in this village and pretty much in this world at this particular point. Your job supersedes everything else. But sometimes I do look at him like, you should kind of understand a little bit more, because you was an even worse boat than your son is. So you should understand what it's like to be lonely and wanting something so desperately. So in that regard, I was looking at his character a little bit. But then at the same time, you look at Boruto's character like, you're kind of acting a little spoiled to a certain degree. I understand you want your father in your life and you're like, fuck, man, why does he have to be this most important person? Now I can't really be with my father. But ultimately, sometimes you just kind of look at it like from both perspectives. Like, Naruto, you should be a little bit more understanding to your children. You don't congratulate your son with a fucking email. At the same time, Boruto, stop being a spoiled little twat and, get over it. Your father will be around when he can be around. I also like how they opened up a lot more of Hinata's character as an adult and kind of her dealing with some of these situations, like, dealing with Boruto's problems and kind of even talking to Sasuke a little bit. It's kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? When do you talk to anybody aside from Naruto-kun? To be honest with you, if you love Naruto, this is definitely the film to watch, because I feel as though it encompasses everything that Naruto was and ultimately what it is now. I mean, the constant reminders of who Naruto was as a child, and one of my favorite lines, and I think one of the best lines of the entire film, was when Boruto asked Sasuke about his father's weaknesses. What are they? And Sasuke said he had a lot of weaknesses. He was a good for nothing, but he overcame all that. He dragged himself out of that. And the Naruto that he is today isn't the person you should try to know. It's what he was and everything he had to endure to get to that point. And just saying that, I get chills, because that is easily one of the best lines of the film. And it just really showcased exactly how Sasuke feels about Naruto. Like, he truly looks at him as an amazing person that went through some crazy shit and ultimately overcame the odds. There were definitely a lot of questions I was left with, like, as far as some of these kids who were all their parents, like Metal Lee, which I don't even think they say his name in this one, but Metal Lee is kind of like unclear whether Rock Lee is really his father or whatnot. You can assume so, but it's kind of like not sure. And then the mother thing is kind of teased a little bit that it's 10-10, but then you don't quite sure know if it is. And then there's another kid that kind of reminds you of Killer B, but it's never really explained. And then at the very end, which I won't spoil, whatever, but like, it's a huge shocker and at the same time a huge tease as to who's the parent of Mitsuki, the third member of that, team. And I think that he definitely should have got a little bit more screen time, because it's kind of like, we know all about Sarada from the Gaiden manga. We understand her completely. Boruto, this movie focuses all on him. But the Mitsuki character, he's just kind of like there. It's like, he's interesting to a certain degree, but he's more so like a side character where it's kind of like, and it's not until the very end of the film where you're like, I want to know more about him. Why the fuck didn't they talk more about him? And I just felt as though the lessons of this film was fucking awesome. Like, never go the easy route. You should always try your hardest, try to overcome the odds. And ultimately, everything isn't going to be given to you on a silver platter. And you can't always expect for things to go exactly your way. Sometimes you got to work at it. Sometimes life just doesn't go exactly according to plan. So I like the lessons from the film. And overall, to be honest with you, this film, as far as any Naruto fan that has witnessed the journey up until now, you will be cheating yourself out of the experience of not seeing how it all ends. Because this is the final chapter of the Narutoverse, and to be honest with you, in my humble opinion, I think it was amazing. I think, honestly, as a standalone film alone, just like not calling it, oh, it's, Naruto film, as a standalone film, it gets no less than an 8.5 to a 9. Personally, I'd give it a 9, because I think the art and animation stood up, the story was amazing, the action pieces were great, the pacing definitely could have been a little bit slower, and we could have got a little bit more context and a little bit more exposition to explain certain aspects, but still, nonetheless, it was an absolute great film. And as far as an entry to the Narutoverse and capping it off, honestly, I felt for the most part it was damn near perfect as a Naruto film. Like, this is 10 out of 10 type of like great closure, awesome way to showcase that the generations will continue. And it's once again one of those films where it's like, I think I want more, and at the same time, I think to a certain degree this film would have benefited as well if they do some sort of like Dragon Ball Super-esque type of thing where they do it in anime form and give a lot more context. I think that this film would benefit from it, and the story in the film would benefit from it greatly. Overall, just amazing experience, and if you're a Naruto fan, go check this film out and definitely cap off the series properly. But if you've seen the film, let me know what you think. What did you think about the characters? How do you feel about Boruto? How do you feel about Sarada, Naruto and Sasuke? Their final battle, I mean, Naruto and Sasuke just threw it down, and honestly, the final battle was just epic as hell, the way they did it. Again, I can't stress enough, it looked so fucking amazing, and there was a lot of carnage. And if you haven't seen the film, do you plan on checking it out? What are you waiting for? I mean, it's a fucking awesome film. The overall thoughts, but that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so as well, that'd be amazing. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.